Hello everyone and welcome back to ENR 3 car project tutorial videos. In today's video, we'll be going over the animation of the full assembly. Again, this is not too bad. It's actually a lot of fun to go through. So I'll make sure to go over the basics, and I'll show you guys all what you need to do to create the animation for this. But again, you can expand on this if you would like. Definitely spend the time to go in and try different things with the animation. It's a very powerful tool to show and present what you have. So right here, we'll do this later, but again, so right now we're in our model view, we have our 3D views, and this is our motion study. So anytime we want to jump into a motion study, we can just toggle that tab and we'll jump into that motion study. One thing to note out is this is an add-in, so we as a SolidWorks Education Edition, you get that. On your student versions, you may not have this motion package, so it's something you should check. If not, then you might have to use a school computer to create this animation. It's not a big deal. All the school computers have the education package, which include the motion study. I'm not sure about the student edition of SolidWorks, if that includes the motion or not, but that's something you can look into. So I have my overall assembly. One thing I want to do before we start the motion assembly is I want to start thinking about, right, so again, your intent, I want to be able to show the rotation of the steering and the rotation of the axle on the back, the motor. And the best way to do this, right, is in animation is just to create some angles. It's very difficult to do this with motorized. You can create a motor, but that's very tough to do, and it's a big motion study. So for the purpose of this, we'll create angles because I think that's the most efficient way to visualize this. So again, well, the best thing to do here is I have my mates, and I have my steering lock. So if I do that, right, so I have my steering lock, and that's what preventing my car from steering left and right. Right? If you guys remember that we've created the steering lock, it's just a parallel made between that face and this face. Again, it can be between any faces. It can be between that and this, or this face and that face. And that's basically preventing this from steering. So if I go ahead and suppress this, right, if I right click on it and suppress it, now I'm able to steer left and right. So for the purpose of this video, I'm gonna keep that. So I'm gonna suppress that, right? Because I want to show those the rotation or the rotating of the steering left and right, and I also want to show the rotation of the motor. So what I'm gonna do here, let me collapse these. I'm gonna create a new mate. And that mate is going to be between this face and that face. And that's going to be an angle mate, if that makes sense, right? So if I put that at 90, you can argue that this can drive the rotation, right? I mean, the rotation is an angle, right? What's the angle with respect to, let's say, this face that will drive the rotation. So if I do, let's say, 120, right, it's rotating, but that's going in. If I do 100, right, you can tell it's rotating. So right now it's at 90, right, between that face and this face. So that's what I want to do. I want to create start with the 90 or an angle mate between these two faces. Click OK. And I'm just going to name this. I'm going to, let's say, rename it. Steering angle mate. Right, so this we can't rotate that. Again, we're locking it with the angle now. I want to do the same thing here. So this can rotate, but I want to rotate it with respect to an angle. So what I'll do here, maybe I'll add a mate between this face and that, the top face, the flat face of the shaft. I'm going to click, and that's going to be an angle. If we set that to 0, right, then that will lock the rotation if everything is mated correctly, and that mate will drive the rotation. So let's do, let's see. So if I do that, if I change this to 45, right, it's going to rotate 90. It's going to rotate. I'm going to click 0 for now. And I'm just going to rename this motor angle mate. Again, you can rename it whatever you would like. I just want to distinguish my mates. I'm going to create a new folder here, and I'm going to call these angle, or I'm just going to call them animation mates. Let's throw the motor angle in there. And at this point, you can argue that we can literally just delete this. I'm just going to leave it for now. Let's see, the driver. I'm thinking of throwing it in another folder, but we can just leave it out because it's easy to just suppress that if you don't have these to toggle the steering on or off. Excuse me. All right, so we're all set to actually start animating. Now let me see. I'll just collapse all these. And I apologize for this highlighting. I'm doing this on a school computer, and it runs a bit slower. So I might go ahead and hit save. Let's rebuild. And again, let's jump into our motion study. So if you've done any video editing or animation in the past, you should be very familiar with this, right? It's just a timeline, and you have your keys. So basically, you're telling, okay, at this key, there's different keys with respect to different mates, and your orientation, lights, parts. And basically, you can just say, okay, at this time frame, I want this to happen, and that's basically all what we're going to be doing today. It's not that complicated. The more time you spend on this, the more familiar with the process you're going to get. But I'll try to go over the big overview of this, right? We're going to try to show some different views, show exploded views, maybe show the rotation, the steering rotate, the mechanism of the steering, and just the drive train. So let's go ahead. So what I want to do here, so with respect to animation, it's gonna animate this window. So whatever you have here, so if you animate it with this view, it's actually gonna crop all this out. So what you want to make sure is whatever you want to be animated is within that window. Again, and that's with any software, right? You have your window or your cutout or your limits, and basically our limit here is this window. You can move this down a bit, and your window is going to get a bit bigger. It's really not going to get bigger. It's going to zoom in, right? Depending if you have a bigger monitor, you might have the timeline expanded a bit more. But if you have you're working with a smaller monitor, or a laptop screen, you might want to drag this down a bit so you have more space. So I'm just going to move this back to somewhere where it was. What I want to do here, let's start with something simple. So I have my orientation, camera views, And this is an important thing, is disable view key creation. So we're gonna have to be toggling that on and off as we go through creating views. Is basically SolidWorks is every time you copy a key, it's gonna try to, if you have that on, it's gonna try to create a view. But if you have it disabled, then it's not gonna try to create a view. So we're gonna basically create segments of 2 seconds where it's transitioning to a view, and 2 seconds where it's just showing that view. So what I want to do here, I'm just gonna jump into my 2 seconds. Right, you can click anywhere. If you click here, there's this, right, this preview of where your timeline or where you want to jump to. If let's say you're at 0, and I want to jump to 2, right? And so let's say my orientation, right? So I have this key orientation in camera view. It's right now it's at 0 second, and the view is custom. What I want to do is I want to click on it. You can do copy, right? Or you can do Control C. What we're gonna do here is we're gonna copy that. We're gonna throw it at 2 seconds. Right now it's gonna do nothing, right? We did not change the view, right? Hence this line is not highlighted or it's not connected. That means it's not transitioning. What I'm gonna do here is I wanna, again, if I copy this, jump to 4, I'm gonna paste that. What I wanna do here is I might undisable that, right? So if I click on it now, this is not disabled. And let's change our view to, let's say, front. Maybe I want to zoom in a bit. And at this point, I want to disable view key creation. Right now, I'm done. This is the view I want. So if I go back and I hit play, it's going to stay at that view for 2 seconds, and it's going to transition within respect for 2 seconds. Maybe I want to do here is maybe I want to copy. So I have that disabled, right? I mean, I don't want to transition here. I might want to copy that, throw it here, hit paste, right? So it's going to transition for 2 seconds. I'm just dragging, and it's going to stay there for 2 seconds, right? And that makes sense. Again, so what we need to do is create all the views. So I'll create another view, but I'll pause the video for you guys to create all the other views, right? It's good practice. Again, it's pretty straightforward. So again, I'm just gonna do, right, I have it disabled. I'm gonna copy that and throw it at 8 seconds. I'm gonna hit paste. I want to be at 8 seconds, and here I want to have that enabled, and maybe I'll go to so we started isometric. Maybe I'll do top, maybe zoom in a bit, and I'll disable that. So if we go back and watch the video, right, 2 seconds, that view, we're going to transition for 2 seconds. We're going to stay there and then transition for another 2 seconds, right? And then your next step is going to be pause for 2 seconds. But all you want to do here is show all your views, right? You want to show your top, bottom, left and right, isometric, maybe back and front, right? So you should have kind of 7 views that you're here to show. So I'll pause the video and I'll do that myself, but you should do that. Again, just copy and pasting, make sure you're disabling the view creation where you don't want to transition, and then you're enabling that when you want to transition to a new view. All right, so I'm back. So again, you should have created all the views. Again, just copying and replicating that. So I have my timeline here. Again, as you keep adding, it's gonna try to condense and have everything in there. You can always do zoom to fit. Basically, there's 2 seconds of transition and 2 seconds where you stay at that view. So I'll play my my video, and then your video should look something similar to this, right? We're showing all our main views here. We're gonna flip over, look at the back, rotate to the front, looking at the left and right views, and we're just going back to full rotation to an isometric view. So this is the first part of the animation. What I want to do next is I'll show this animation. So what I want to do here is I have my, let's see, mates. So I have my animation mates here. So I'm at 31, 2, so I'm at 34, and maybe, let's see. So we have this, trying to think if this view is good enough to show. I might, let's see, I might create another view here. Where I'm just gonna maybe go up to here. Let's disable the view creation, right? So it's gonna, once it gets here, it's gonna stop and it's just gonna zoom in, right? Because we want to show this animation a bit closer. So I'm at 36 seconds, and again, now what I want to do, if I expand this bit, right, I have this overall big tree. And what I want to do here is, again, I went to my mates and I expanded on my animation mates, and I have my angle motor angle mate. So again, this is my key. So I don't want anything to happen until we get to this time frame. Again, for you it might be a bit different. And for here I might do 36. Copy that. Maybe after 2 seconds, maybe another 2 seconds. Maybe I'll do another 2 seconds. So at this, I have 0 degrees, and maybe after 2 seconds, I want to change that to be 45. And then after that, I want to go to 0 degrees, and maybe I'll do, let's say, negative 45. Oh, sorry, from 0 to 60, so maybe I'll do 90. So let's see what that looks like. So with these more complicated animated mates, we might have to actually hit or calculate, because this is a lot of math that gets involved, right? If I hit play, nothing is gonna happen. So what I want to do here, when I get to this, I want to hit calculate. And when we hit calculate, it's actually going to start from the beginning and go through it and calculate everything that needs to be calculated. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to hit calculate, and it's basically going through. And for these, it really doesn't need a lot of calculations, right? We're just switching views. But once we get to this point, we should start seeing some animation being calculated. Right, we're just going to zoom in. So 0, right, start. So if I go back now and I hit play, right? We should do some rotating, so it's going to rotate both ways. Maybe rotate back. Perfect. So what I want to do next is maybe also I'm at 42. I might want to go up and just add another view here. So Control C. Maybe I'll stop for 2 seconds here. I'm going to Control C that, and I'm going to go to 44. I'm going to toggle my disable. And so I want show the steering. So for this, I might go to, let's see, the top. And I'll disable my view creation. And maybe we'll go to the top, stop for 2 seconds, right? Transition, and then stop for 2 seconds maybe, and then at 46 we'll start showing the animation for the steering. So for the steering, I'm gonna copy my steering key, Control C, gonna throw it at 46, Control V, and you can do right click, copy and paste. What I want to do here is I want to create another one. Let's do copy. Maybe with this I'll do 3 seconds. So from 41 to 44. And maybe I'll do another 3 seconds. And I'll go back to 1, 2, 3. So at 55, I'll throw the last one. So I'm gonna. So this is at 90, and maybe I'll do rotate left or right, and then go back to my 90 degree. So same thing here. I'm going to at 49. I'm gonna do. Let's do. Let's do by 15 degrees. So I'll do 105. And then here, I'll do, so we did 15. So maybe I'll do 75 here. Just because I don't want it to overlap. I don't want it to be unrealistic, right? If we made this angle bigger or larger, then this will interfere with my chassis, and I don't want that. And then I will just go back. Again, this will need to recalculate, right? This is a mathematical calculation that SOLIDWORKS needs to do. So I'm going to hit calculate. And again, every time you hit calculate, SOLIDWORKS is going to go back and start from the beginning. So you might argue, okay, why should I calculate multiple times? Why don't I create everything and then just hit calculate once? Yes, you can do that, but sometimes you run into issues and you want to make sure that your last step was completed properly, and then you don't want to miss anything. So that's why we calculate after we complete each step to make sure we've completed that step correctly, and then we can just move on to the next one. Okay, so we're going to rotate the motor here. And when it calculates, it's going to run a bit slow, right? But when we played the video, it ran just fine. And once we generate actually an MP4 video, it's going to be even smoother. Okay, so we're going to rotate here. And we're going to stop. So if I come here, throw this my timeline, I'm going to hit play. It will be a bit smoother with the animation. Perfect. So what I want to do here, I'll probably just go ahead and hit save. And what I want to do, so we're at 51, 2, 3, 4, we're at 55. What I'll do here is I'm going to copy this. I'm going to create another view here. Again, I'm gonna that's my stopping view, and this is where I transition to a new view. Again, I want to say undisable that, and let's create some exploded views at the end. So let's do. I want to go to my. Let's do the rear axle explode, and it actually is going to put it at a place where it's going to show the explosion. So that's where I need it. So I'm going to disable the view creation here. If I go to my configuration, so it's always going to explode the top, the first exploded view, right? Since we have 3 exploded views here, you might want to, let's see, I just wanted to move this up a bit. So let's see if we can move this down. Okay, so I have my rear axle explode as the main one. And what I want to do here is I'll animate the rear axle explode. So what I'll do here, and the best way to do this is if I go to Animation Wizard, and I want to explode, right? I'm gonna click Next. So we're starting at 57 second, and the duration, it can be 10 seconds. So we'll leave it at 10. You can go down to 8 or 7 or 6, whatever number, depending how long you want that duration to be. Let's do, I'm just gonna leave it at 10 for now. I'm gonna click Finish. So what that does, so where is our, so if I hit play, it's gonna explode for 10 seconds, right? We chose 10 seconds. And we're at 106 right now. And what I want to do here, I'm gonna throw another animation wizard, and I want to collapse. I'm gonna click Next. I want to collapse for 10 seconds. Maybe I want to collapse faster, so we'll do 6 seconds for collapse. I'm gonna click Finish. So I'm gonna click Play, and you see it's collapsing a bit faster. So it's gonna collapse in 6 seconds instead of 10 where we exploded. So one thing to point out is you can add a transition in the middle, right, where you can stop after you explode. Let's say you stop for 3 seconds and then you collapse. Again, but for the purpose of this video, you should be very familiar at this point. We're just adding different pauses or views where you just stay still for a bit and then move on to the next view. So I'll pause the video here and I'll create the other 2 exploded views. But so you should do the same. Again, you should be very familiar with what to do with exploded views. So I'll pause the video and I'll create mine, and then you should spend time to create the other 2 exploded views, right? The sensor and battery explode, basically the same procedure. You might want to decrease the time or increase it depending on the complexity of the other exploded views. So I'm gonna pause my video. All right, so I'm back. I created the other 2 exploded views and collapsed views. So your video should look something like this. Again, I'm gonna hit play. So again, we're basically in the beginning, we're showing the different orientation of our car. So we're going to the top. We're gonna transition to the bottom, right? There's a 2-second transition. Again, you can increase that or decrease it. We're going to the back. Transitioning to the front, and then we're showing both the left and right side of the car, and we're just jumping back to isometric. Again, we calculated some, again zoomed in a bit, and we calculated the motion of our drivetrain, and then we transition to another view where we showed the steering. And then I transition to an exploded view, right? Remember for those views I chose the views that we created for the exploded views. So I do an exploded view, and then I do exploded and I collapse, and then again I do an exploded view, and then collapse. I usually tend to decrease the time for the collapse, make it go a bit faster, transition to another view, and do my last exploded view. One thing to point out, right? So every time you want to create an exploded view, it's going to choose the exploded view on the top. So if you want a steering exploded view, you're going to have to move this, right? Just the order of it. And for the last, I just went back to my isometric view, zoomed in a bit. But that's basically it. This is our full animation. So what I want to do here is I'm going to click Save Animation. And I'm going to save it somewhere. Let's see. Let's do... let's save it on my desktop. I'm going to call it Chassis Assembly. Animation. Let's see. I'm gonna keep this frames per second and see how that works out. Let's look save. I'm going to click OK. Yeah, let's recalculate. So it's gonna go back and recalculate it. Right, because it needed to be recalculated for the exploded views we've added. And now it's generating our video. Okay, just give it a minute or two to finish this up. It will take a bit when it gets to generating the motion, right? Because this is requiring a lot of CPU and GPU math calculation, so it's going to take a bit depending on how fast your computer is and the specs. It's a bit of a longer video, right? We did a lot of animation, so just got to be patient. There's our exploded views, and we're going to collapse. Jump into the second one. I think this is the last one, actually. Then just going back to an isometric view. Okay, so let's see if what video we generated. So we have the chassis assembly animation. So we're gonna double click that, open it with the STL, and we have our video. Again, I'm just gonna click play and just go watch it from the beginning, right? Make sure I didn't miss anything. So far, so good. I didn't crop out any views. And then, right, we're showing the left and right. So in the motion, right, it's much smoother in the video, right? It's very smooth. This should be smooth too here, right? Very nice. And then we're gonna look at our exploded views. The second exploded view. The last exploded view. Again, and with respect to timing, right, you can choose a duration for the exploded. I usually try to have a longer duration for the exploded view than the collapse, right? So you might see, you might notice that the collapse is going by a bit faster. But again, this is a preference thing, right? I'm just gonna go back to my zoom into my overall isometric view, and that's it. We're done with our assembly. Make sure you save. Make sure you have your video shows all views, the 3 exploded views, and the animation for the steering, and the your motion for the motor and the gears, where you drivetrain, right? And make sure you generate a file that you can play, and that's what we're gonna use to import to our PowerPoint, right? So whether it's I think it's an MP4 format. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next